Realistically, there are only 2 steps to anchoring, but I broke those steps down into 8 steps just to make it easier to learn. But once you get it, it becomes super simple. So step 1, elicit an emotion. You must go first, meaning that if you get into that emotion first when you're trying to elicit it, it makes it much easier to bring it up in the other person. So if you are trying to get them excited, you want to feel a little bit of that excitement yourself. You don't have to go full-blown into it, but you don't want to be on the other end of the spectrum. If you're mopey and sad and low energy, and you're like, yeah, so what's it like when you're excited? You're going to have some trouble. So getting into the emotion first is a big part of this. However, you can also be lazy. You can simply wait for them to naturally experience an emotion. You don't have to create it yourself, and when you see it, then you can anchor it. Step number 2, calibrate. Make sure they are in the emotion before you anchor it. Step number 3, set the anchor on the acceleration phase as it is ramping up and before it reaches the peak. Step number 4, break the state. If you're conditioning, if you're trying to make the anchor stronger, then it's a good idea to break the state and repeat. We'll talk about this in a bit. Step number 5, re-elicit and intensify the state. Step number 6, set the same anchor once again. Step number 7, repeat steps 4 through 6 a few times. And finally, step number 8, fire the anchor and test to make sure you got the response. So let's break this down. As I said, going first means you must feel the emotion a little bit, or at the very least, make sure to be neutral. Some language patterns for state elicitation. What's it like when X happens? What do you think about X? What does X feel like for you? And more direct, remember a time when you felt X. So Jennifer, can you remember the last time you felt super excited? Like crazy excited, like you were just bursting with energy? Yes, I can. Great. So as you remember that time, I'm just curious, what does that excitement feel like for you? What does it feel like? I feel tingly all over. Boom, you got the state. So we ask questions to help lead them into an emotional response, usually but not always by having them remember or revivify a memory from the past. Strong emotional states are not necessary, but they're going to be easier for you to calibrate. So when first starting out, it's better for you to try to anchor big, powerful emotions, okay? Shoot for something you can see in the person's physiology. In other words, they're going to be displaying the emotion. Step number 2, calibrate. So you're going to pay close attention to your subject and do your best to notice when they're going into the state. And the shift may be subtle, depending, number 1, on the emotion, and number 2, on the actual person. Some people are just not very emotionally expressive, so they're going to be a little bit harder to anchor because you may not know when the state actually begins. Some things to look at for calibration: you look at their facial expression, their body posture, their breathing, their vocal tone, and their animation. Do they seem more animated now? So what you're looking for is contrast. Notice how they look and act and feel before you do the elicitation, and notice how they look right after. You're looking for changes that signal that they're going into that state. And of course, if you miss it, then re-elicit. No big deal, okay? You can spend all day trying to get the state and anchoring it properly. It doesn't matter, because once you get it right once, you've got it, all right? So don't be afraid to keep trying if you think you missed it. Next step, set the anchor. You need to set the anchor as early as possible during the acceleration phase. So what that means is, when an emotion is triggered, there is a ramp-up period. They feel it a little bit, it gets more intense until it hits the peak, and then it dissipates. So we want to set that anchor as that emotion is essentially growing. So another way to put it, as soon as you see that emotion developing, the first sign that lets you know should be an indicator that it's time to set the anchor. You don't want to wait too long. So how do you set the anchor? You're going to focus on 3 main ways to do it. You can use a touch, a word or phrase, or a gesture or motion. And it's important to make it unique, something they don't normally see, or something that you're not going to do 100 times automatically. If you have a weird habit of scratching your nose 100 times a day, then you don't want to use that as an anchor, because if you keep firing it off dozens and dozens of times in a row, you're going to dilute it. So pick something that's unique, a little unusual, and something that they're not going to see or hear 100 times a day. So now let's back up. You elicited the state. Jennifer says, I feel tingly all over. So then you're going to say, tingly, or tingly all over. It's a good idea to just use their words and also their intonation pattern. So if she says, I feel tingly, you're going to say tingly the same way. Okay? Now you can also use a different word or a different phrase. She may say, I feel tingly all over, and you say, awesome. Okay? So now you have an anchor set. But it's not just the word, it's the way that you say the word. So when you go to fire it off, you don't want to say awesome. You want to say awesome. the same tonal pattern you used when you said it. Okay? That is what gives it its uniqueness. Now, that's one way to do it. That's an auditory anchor. You can also use a gesture or motion. So when she says, I feel tingly all over, you can reach up and scratch your chin for 2 seconds. Now, that emotion is linked to the scratching of your chin. But just like with the word, when you go to fire it, you need to scratch your chin in the exact same spot, in the exact same way. So it's important that you pay attention to your gestures and voice tone when you're setting the anchor. And finally, you can use a touch. You can touch your hand. You can touch her on the shoulder. Shoot for between half a second and 2 seconds max, okay? You don't need a lot of time to set it. But again, pay close attention to exactly where you touch the person. Because when you fire it off later, you need to touch them in exactly the same spot, with the same amount of pressure. And if you don't do it perfectly, it may still work, but you may not get the full emotional response. So the key is unique triggers that you're well aware of, you know exactly what you did when you set them, and you're going to remember to fire them off later in the exact same way. So you set your anchor, and now we're going to break the state. This is only if you want to condition it in to make it stronger. And when you're using anchors during your hypnosis sessions, I highly recommend that you do it this way. So to break their state, you just want to momentarily distract them. You want to take their focus and put it somewhere else. It's very simple. You can say, just close your eyes for a second. Now open them. That's it. You distracted them from that memory or thought process. An even better way to do it is to say, so real quick, what is your phone number backwards? 7624. Okay, stop. Just interrupt them, because just starting that process was enough to distract them. So now you have what's called a clean state. Well, technically in this case, you have a bit of a confused state now, but that's okay, because what we want to do is pull them out of that original emotion, because now you understand oscillation and how it works. So when we pull them out of that state, we can bring them back into the state and make it a little bit stronger. And here's how we do that. And just keep in mind, this is just one way to do it. You don't have to do it this way. So Jennifer, now I want you to remember another time where you felt even more excitement, maybe a birthday or a fun vacation, and as you remember that time, I want you to feel that excitement flooding all through you. Even stronger now. Pay attention to it and feel excitement. Okay, that's it. Have them choose a different memory, revivify it, and you can crank it up a bit with your patter. You can also have them make the pictures bigger and brighter and more shiny and colorful, and you can make the sounds louder, all the stuff you already know how to do. Step number 6, you're going to set the exact same anchor in exactly the same way, remembering to set it on the escalation phase and not at the peak or afterwards. Step number 7, repeat steps 4 through 6, self-explanatory. And while you don't need to repeat the sequence, it's going to help you make the anchor stronger. So while you're first starting out, I highly recommend that you do it this way. And then after you've done the sequence about 3 or 4 times, you're going to fire it off and test. So you're talking to Jennifer and you say, you know what I feel like? I feel like a burger from that new burger spot. I mean, I just feel tingly just thinking about how awesome their food is. Fire it off exactly the same way she said it, which I can't remember now how I said it before, so if that wasn't exact, I apologize. But whatever your anchor is, it could be awesome. It could be, that's fantastic. Whatever it is, fire it off using the same speed and tonality. And it does help to go back into that state yourself. So as I fire off that tingly anchor, I want to bring up some feelings of excitement in my own body. If you used a gesture, you're going to scratch your chin or make whatever hand movement you made in exactly the same way. If you touch their hand, you're going to touch it again in exactly the same spot with the exact same pressure, and then calibrate. Are they showing signs of going back into the state? And if you're unsure, just ask them. So, weird question. How do you feel when I say tingly? How do you feel when I touch your hand back here? What does this remind you of? And see what they say, because some people may not be displaying outward signs, but inside, they are having the experience. All right, so that was more of a conversational example, at least part 1. The second part, where I re-elicited it, I did more of a hypnosis type style. But now I want to show you how to do this completely in the context of a hypnosis session. And it's much easier because the touching isn't going to seem strange in the context of hypnosis. On top of that, you can also use patter to make the anchor stronger. So Anna, go ahead and remember a time when you felt incredibly confident, super confident. See what you saw, hear what you heard, and notice what that confidence feels like for you. And when you can feel that, nod your head for me. They nod, you're going to touch the back of their wrist for about 3 seconds. Now feel that confidence growing stronger. And each time I touch you here, that feeling of confidence will come right back, stronger each time. Very good. Now remember another time where you felt even more confident. See what you saw, and feel that confidence flooding all through you. And nod your head when you feel that. They nod their head and you set the anchor again. That's it. Simple. The next one is a sliding anchor. So not only can you use an anchor to fire off the original state, but you can also use it to intensify a state. So instead of being like a light switch on or off, it becomes more like a knob. You can turn it up and you can turn it down. So it's almost the same as the one before with a slight modification. As you are intensifying the state with your patter, you're going to start sliding your finger up their arm. So you touch them with one or two fingers, and as the state is intensifying, instead of leaving it there, you're going to start tracing a path up their arm. And it's super simple. Don't overthink it. It's exactly the way I'm describing it. Just touch them and start slowly sliding your finger up. Easy. So Anna, remember a time when you felt incredibly confident. See what you saw, hear what you heard, and notice what that confidence feels like. And when you can feel that, nod your head for me. They nod. You touch the back of the wrist, hold it for a couple of seconds, and start sliding it up. Now feel that confidence. As my finger moves up your arm, I want you to feel the confidence growing stronger. Even more intense. Feel confident. Notice how the higher up my finger goes, the stronger the feeling gets. And then you let go and repeat with a different memory. Do it 3 or 4 times and then test the anchor. So you touch her on the hand, and that fires the state. Notice what she looks like, how she's acting, and then start moving your finger up. And notice if the state intensifies. And you can also move your finger back down and watch it decrease. So now you have a slider for the emotional state. And last one for today, how to set an anchor on yourself. Choose a state, confidence, peace, focus, whatever. Remember a time when you felt that way and relive the experience. See what you saw, hear what you heard, make the colors bigger and brighter, shinier, the sounds louder, until you feel the state intensifying. As soon as you start to feel it come on, make an OK sign with your thumb and middle finger. So take your right thumb and your right middle finger and squeeze them tightly together for about 3 seconds while continuing to amp up the state. So whatever you were doing in your mind, making the pictures bigger, brighter, whatever, keep doing that as you're squeezing your fingers. After about 3 seconds, release your fingers while still amping up the state for another 1 or 2 seconds, okay? So what we're trying to go for here, we don't want you to release your fingers after the peak. So you want to get those 3 seconds in and then release your fingers while you're still building it. So we're setting it and releasing it while we're still on the acceleration phase. Break your state, put your phone number backwards, and then repeat 3 more times. If you don't have a different memory, that's fine. You can still use the same one, but it's usually better to combine multiple memories where you felt the same or a similar emotion. And that's it. After you've done that, break your state 1 more time, and then squeeze your fingers together in the same way, and notice how you feel. Even if it doesn't come back as strongly, and sometimes it doesn't, it is still a success. So if you bring the emotion back a little bit, and that's it, fine, that's okay. Keep doing the exercise. Try to revivify the emotion a little bit stronger each time. And then each time you anchor it the same way, you are compounding the intensity of the anchor. So now that you know what to do, how do you practice this? You can frame it as a fun experiment. If you don't want to go through the hassle of doing a hypnosis session, you can simply say, hey, so check this out. I'm going to show you something super interesting about how your mind works. And that's it. Ask them to revivify a memory and then anchor it. You can also incorporate it into your change word techniques. You can set anchors during the danger room and the power stack, and you can also teach them to create a tactile self-anchor for the bubble of Zen. So instead of anchoring the feelings of peace to the image of the bubble, you can have them squeeze their fingers together, just like the self-anchor. And speaking of self-anchors, you should be doing them on yourself every single day, and then fire them off in situations when you might need them, because it is incredibly useful to make yourself calm, confident, focused, excited, enthusiastic, or what have you, on command. And then you can start linking those emotional states to certain activities, certain places. There's lots you can do with this. And in the next anchoring lesson, I'll be teaching you all of these super sneaky tricks, like anchoring people without their knowledge, anchoring emotions to objects, the sexual anchoring, orgasm anchoring, all of it. But you need to practice the basics if you're going to be successful with the advanced stuff. So go have fun with this, anchor away, and I will see you in the forums. Take care.